So, what's the difference between law and religion? Now, the answer might seem obvious, because everyone in this country is expected to follow the rules of the law. If you drive too fast on the road, if you attack someone, if you steal something, you end up in court. But you can't be taken to court for not going to church, for not going to the synagogue, for not going to the mosque, and so on. So there are no legal consequences for non-belief, for not praying correctly. You have a choice whether to be religious or not. You don't have a choice about following the law. However, if we take a step back, we might see that there are more similarities between religion and law than we otherwise thought. To start off with, law and religion are both interested in regulating how we behave, setting down rules about how we live in society. So, to give an obvious example, murder is against the law, so is using violence against other people. And most religions, if not all religions, would agree with that. You can ask a priest, a rabbi, an imam, a guru, and they'll say that hurting others is wrong. It's bad for the soul, and this is an action which you ought to avoid, and if you can't avoid it, you have to apologise for it when you do it. There's also something called the Golden Rule, which is an idea common to the three Abrahamic religions, that is Judaism, Christianity and Islam, which says you should do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So if you wouldn't like someone to do it to you, you shouldn't do it to them. It's also an idea found in ancient philosophies, in Sanskrit. And the idea is meant to stop violence escalating. It's the same reason we have judges, we have courts, and we have a legal system. And religion, like law, has rules. Rules about fasting, rules about when you pray, rules about observing holy days. The difference between law and religion might be that law is concerned with action. It won't punish you for private thoughts if you don't act on those thoughts. Whereas religion is concerned with behaviour. It might even invite you to improve your behaviour by giving to charity, by caring for the sick, and so on. Law isn't interested in the scope of personal virtue. So those might be the differences. The next question for us might be whether we want religion to be a part of the law, whether it's good for specific religious ideas to be incorporated into the law, and that is in many ways a harder question. Now, in some cases, religion is already part of the law, even if we don't necessarily realise that. So if you will go to court and give evidence, you'll be asked to swear to tell the truth. And if you're religious, you'll swear on your holy book, the Bible, the Quran, the Old Testament. If you're not religious, you'll simply be asked to give an affirmation that you're telling the truth. So there's an idea there that promising before God to be truthful encourages you to take the situation more seriously, encourages you to act in good faith, encourages you to be an honest witness. But in previous centuries, law and religion were much more closely intertwined. So where we have a jury in modern cases, in the past, judgment was done quite differently. In the past, it was done in Europe in the Middle Ages through something called the ordeal, where you'd ask God to give a verdict. If you suspected someone, you would ask them to put their hand into a cauldron of boiling water or to carry a boiling hot stone. Your hand would then be burnt, it would be wrapped up, and 3 days later it would be inspected. If you'd healed, then it would be considered God's decision, showing that you were innocent. If the burn remained, that was a sign from God that you were guilty. Now that process, the ordeal, might seem to us a very strange way of doing things, because we today think of law as about hearing the evidence and assessing for ourselves whether someone is innocent or guilty. And there is an argument against having too much religion in law. Religion and law haven't always proved good friends or worked well together. Law can be used to persecute minorities in the name of religion, and you can probably think of many examples of that both in the past and in the present. Now, that question about the present brings us on to the relationship between law and religion today. And it's often a complex one in modern societies, and there's a lot of controversy around how we protect religious beliefs, but also how we protect other people from religious beliefs of others. Now, we can all probably agree that people should be free to worship as they wish, to make their own choices, so long as they're not hurting anyone. But the problem for lawyers and judges is what happens when a person's faith might be damaging another person's rights, and how far we protect religion in an increasingly diverse society. So I want to finish by giving you 2 examples based on recent cases, and it's for you to decide how you would act if you were the judge in these cases. So case number 1. Now, we have laws which show that people deserve equal treatment. So, for example, you can't racially discriminate against someone. I can't refuse to teach a student because of the colour of their skin, which is entirely right. But in this case, imagine that you have a baker who has very strong religious beliefs, and the baker is asked by a gay couple to make a cake for their wedding. Now, the baker refuses because he is very religious and believes that marriage is only between a man and a woman. Now, if you're the judge in this case, Do you decide that the baker has discriminated and acted against the law? Is that baker obliged to serve everyone, all customers, because that's his job? He makes cakes. Or is he allowed to refuse based on what he believes? Does it matter that the refusal is based on a religious belief? If that baker was an atheist and simply was homophobic, would that make it okay for him to refuse service, or would your answer be different? So that's the first example. For the second case, I want you to imagine that you're on a plane. Passenger A is sitting on the plane, and Passenger A has very strict religious beliefs, and Passenger A believes that men and women need to be kept separate wherever possible. Now, Passenger A is seated next to Passenger B, who's a woman, and he doesn't know her, so Passenger A asks the aircrew to move Passenger B to another seat, but the plane is full, and Passenger B, in any case, doesn't want to swap. Now, eventually, in order to get the plane off the ground, Passenger B agrees to move, or is forced to move, but she then sues the airline for breaching her rights. She's bought a ticket. She thinks she's being discriminated against on the basis of her gender, and she's been made to feel like a second-class citizen. Now, if you're the judge, what do? Is the judge obliged to fine the airline company for discrimination? And whose rights does that judge safeguard? What principles would you use in that decision? Now, those are just two examples, and this is a relatively new and very tricky area of the law, one that gives lawyers and judges real headaches. It's a balancing act. But those two cases are useful illustrations of the very many complex ways in which religion and law are interacting and continue interacting to this day.